Hey there, and welcome to the Relatabel Podcast. My name is Abel Matthews. I used to be a single comedian who switched lanes at the age of 26 to get married and at 32 to take up a corporate profession. And the good news is I'm loving both. And this podcast is about my life, from faith to finance, comedy to corporate life, or parenting to pipelines. Sales pipelines, I mean. It's very technical. I don't want to get into it right now. My hope is that in listening to this podcast, you would find yourself receiving perspective, insight, and even something new to look forward to each time you listen to it. So let's jump right in. Welcome to the Relatabel Podcast. Oh, by the way, get the pun? It's relatable, made relatable because my name is Abel. Anyway, never mind. Let's get to the show. Welcome to episode 2 of the Relatabel Podcast. What's good? What's happening? First of all, I just want to address something that a lot of people asked me after that first episode. What the hell is going on with your accent? Why do you keep switching between the two accents? I mean, one time it's Pop-Tarts, the other time it's booty, and there's a story behind it, which is a whole episode by itself, but let me try to condense it and give you the short version. I grew up outside of India. I was not in India, and where I grew up, there was a lot of racism, being one of the only brown boys around. In Kuwait, it was interesting because I went to this very multicultural school, some of whom actually listen to this podcast. Thank you very much, guys. Pleasure to reconnect after so many years. And after the multicultural school aside, that was not where the real racism happened. That was beautiful. But it was really in other scenarios. I, in fact, went to an evangelical white American church. And believe it or not, that's where some of it took place. And so I realized very quickly that if I have to at least even be in the room when they talk, I gotta probably start to sound like them. It's, as an adult, you realize how nonsensical that is. But as a child, you want to be accepted. So that's kind of how I absorbed it. My family is very multicultural as well. We have a good representation of non-Indians. And so put all these factors together, growing up in a country where in general there was also a lot of racism. Brown skin wasn't exactly looked up to. And in fact, it even determined how much you got paid in some cases. So that's kind of the short version of why I have an accent. But anyway, that being said, I want to thank everybody who listened to episode 1. I mean, what a relief. It's so good when you know that your mom is not the only one listening to the podcast, which in my case is actually a figure of speech because my mom died 6 years ago. It is what it is. I use that just as a phrase to say that it was not just those in my close circle, right? And you might also be thinking to yourself, what the hell took you so long with episode 2? Here's the short story. We did record an episode 2, and we meaning there is somebody else coming here. Yes, that's right, in a couple of seconds. We did record episode 2. We in fact did 50 full minutes, 50. We did 50 minutes of pure lovely conversation. At the end, I hit stop. I turn to this person and I go, what the hell did we just talk about? In fact, we both said that to each other. So we decided it's probably best to kind of take another shot at it. It took us some time though. It's been a busy couple of weeks. So with that said, let's actually go right into what I want to talk to you about today. Now, this podcast is a journey. And I'm hoping that at every stop along this journey, you find it relatable. I love that name. And stop 1 was just kind of giving you the big picture. Stop 2 is where I'd like to take a pause and talk about relationships, and specifically one relationship that has been such an important catalyst in literally changing the kind of person I am. I don't recognize myself from even 2 years ago, and that relationship is my marriage. My decision to get married is, I always say, the single most important decision I have made outside of my decision to actually pursue the faith that I do. Outside of that, marriage was the next big thing because it catalyzed so much of the change in me as a person. And so I figured if I'm going to talk about marriage, there has to be, and how marriage changed me, there has to be the other person, the other equal participant in the marriage. And so I am going to bring her on. That's right, first of all, it's a her. Contrary to, my very metrosexual and my very cleaned up appearance, I'm actually straight. And maybe I might edit that part out in the post. I don't know why I said that. Shh, I've not brought you on yet. Don't laugh in the background. And so, let me introduce the other person in this marriage. It's not going to be mushy. The podcast, the episode, I mean, but even my introduction, probably not mushy as well. Because in this corner, right behind me, waiting to show up here, standing at 4'9". Okay, probably that's a bit of an exaggeration, maybe 5'3". She just threw a float at me. Thank God it's deflated. Standing at 5'3", weighing in at a healthy number. Abel Matthews' biggest critic. That's right, there's a lot of pregnancy jokes here. Please give it up for the one, the only, Kavitha Sundarsingh. Ta-da! Here she is. Hello, babe. Welcome. Good job on retaining the maiden name, by the way. I just noticed. We didn't do a prenup, so that's her version of a prenup, Just in case. Yeah, actually, I mean, when I was introducing, I was like, that's a bit weird, using your maiden name. Anyway, that's just, it's just a side.
Well, it's just because how complicated it is to change your name.
Red tape.
In India, yeah.
And that's what I tell myself every time I sleep at night. It's not a prenup thing. It was just red tape. So, you're my first ever, I can't call you a guest because you're family. But you are technically, as far as the podcast is concerned, my first ever guest on the show in this chair right next to me.
First ever of like the two episodes.
Of the one episode you recorded. Yeah. Wow, good job. But I know, if I had to bring someone on, I know you probably would not have expected it to be you.
Not this early on, yes.
Not this early on. That's also right. So has this caught you by surprise?
Kinda, yes. Yes.
Care to tell more as to why? Yes. Oh, this is going to be a very interactive podcast, I can tell. Otherwise, she wants to tell me about every nuance of the day. But now it's just very straightforward answers. The way I like my day updates. How's your day? Good. Oh, thank God. And just walk away.
I am pleasantly surprised. I wouldn't say I'm so shocked. But I'm pleasantly surprised, yes.
Okay.
I thought you'd have one of your many very, very well accomplished friends on your podcast before me.
Wow.
Maybe one of your first wives as well. Not one of your, but your first wife.
What she means is my friends. She's talking about my friends.
Yeah.
Not any previous marriage. Yeah. Why my first marriage broke me is not the title of this podcast. I mean, at the risk of, I think, giving away the punchline, if I may. The reason I titled the episode what I did is because this is where I'm at 32 is the, you can verify this, right? But where I'm at is the healthiest place I've ever been in my life. Whether we're talking mentally, whether we're talking physically, whether we're talking financially, whether we're talking faith, there is just so much of change that has happened in the last 6 years, specifically. And now at 32, I feel like it's only now that I'm actually starting out on life. I have the right foundations only now. Like my priorities have been realigned, all of that stuff, right? And I think
that's true.
And I think, and this is to the point of why you're here, because this one relationship, the marriage especially, completely catalyzed that change. Was it a change I was consciously working towards? No. That's the God honest truth.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But it just happened.
I mean, it's not like you set off in marriage saying, I want to change in this area and I want to change in this area. It happens.
And let's be clear. We're talking about this in the context of me as a person, but I didn't say that about my marriage either, where I set out with marriage saying, I want to be a better husband and we should be like this type of a couple by the end. I don't think we spoke about it, but we never consciously worked toward it. I did. I know you did, but I didn't consciously work toward it.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I want to, and that's why I wanted you here. Because you've witnessed that change. You know what marriage has done. And of course, it's not just marriage per se. It's the institution of marriage being also very strongly influenced by my faith journey. I think it was a combination of these factors plus my experiences. There were lots of unusual experiences, things we didn't see coming.
Yeah.
I think it was this.
That we were thrown into.
Yeah, and I think had the same experiences happened, which I will get into in just a bit, but had the same experiences happened, if I was single, I know you'll agree with this, I don't think I would have changed as much as I did.
Maybe not, yeah.
And
you would have learned, there would
Yeah.
have been some learnings, but
Yeah.
I don't know if you would be at the same place that you are at today,
That's true.
or if you would have learned the depth of the lessons that you've learned
Yeah.
in the last 6
Yeah, the reason I use the word broke in the title is I was thinking of horses, wild horses specifically. They say you need to break a horse. Now, I'm not an equestrian by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I don't even know if I can spell equestrian. But I think they say you need to be able to break a horse so that the horse is then ready for use. And I think if I needed to be ready for life, life in the real world, real life, I needed to be broken. And I think God used marriage to be that training
I was
ground.
wondering where this analogy was going.
Well, I was not going to say God used you to break my back. I was not going to say that. But here's what I hope, right? My hope is as we jump into this episode,
Say that again. God used marriage too.
God used marriage as that training ground, as that breaking ground of sorts. And whatever I had to learn in the context of being responsible for someone else and wondering, hey, I'm taking this other person along this journey with me. Are they aligned? Are they aligned with me? Again, I'm talking about this very selfishly from my perspective, but we'll come to how all of this kind of meets together in the marriage ground, which is really a 50-50, or dare I even say 100-100.
I would say
100-100, right?
Yeah.
So I think what I would love for a listener to take away from today is, I think, probably two things. In sharing my story, this part of my story, I think one of those key things I would like to highlight is obviously the story of who I was, how I thought, and how that has changed today.
Yeah.
And how, number two, if especially you are in your 20s or 30s, don't shake, you're shaking the camera. Especially if you're in your 20s or your 30s, and you've been delaying marriage because you think marriage may not be, it may actually kind of pull you back. Just from my personal experience, it's done the exact opposite, right? So I realize right now it's just too much of a setup. So let's just dive right in, right?
Yeah, so I actually had a question.
Sure, go ahead.
What were you, when you say, marriage broke me,
Yeah.
what were your expectations?
It was a dramatic start. I thought it was going to be a really nice start.
What were your expectations of it when you got married, or when you were leading up to the wedding?
Oh, that's a good question.
What were you thinking?
Actually, you kind of
And
jumped.
how does that I've jumped.
No, that's good. I'm just saying you jumped straight into what I wanted to talk about.
That's
what
I always do.
She's being sarcastic
6
here.
years of experience doing this.
She's being sarcastic here. She never does that. That's her sarcasm, by the way. Let me backtrack here. I think for me, marriage was the last thing on the cards. Your question was, how was it different, right?
What were your expectations, and how does that
I had
contrast
none.
to where
I had none. Marriage as an
thinking about it
institution.
now?
Marriage as an institution was the last thing for me to engage in. I first had these goals I wanted to achieve. Coming out of college, I was very clear. I'm not destined for the corporate world. I'm destined for bigger things than this. I'm going to be a comedian. I'm going to be an entertainer. And I had this idea of really making it big. I mean, it would sound super crazy if I were to say this right now on record. Should I say it on record? Or maybe just keep it to myself? Maybe I'll reveal half and half. That's a good compromise. Right? I was thinking Hollywood. What else is left to say? I think I gave it away. Okay, never mind. But I was thinking something really big, right? I'm thinking big career, lots of money, and a large sphere of influence, all of which were good. I still don't fault that at all. But I think what made it bad was the place from which all these things were motivated. They were motivated from great amounts of insecurity, which, interestingly enough, I realized only last year, at the end of last year. And until then, she has seen this. Our marriage had to go through this dark road where, because I wasn't really achieving what I wanted to achieve, I couldn't define it beyond what I just told you guys. I was very unhappy. I was extremely unhappy, which also meant when it came to our marriage, I never viewed the marriage as something that pulled me down, but at the same time, I used to wonder, oh, did I get married at the right time? Because I've always been, and you know this, I've been a firm believer in there's no such thing as the one. It will work with whoever you make it work with. But now, being on this side of, we just celebrated 6 years, wedding anniversary, right? Just celebrating 6 years, I realized that is only partly true. The other side of it is also, it does matter who you get married. Because if the other person is, the personality is not one where the person's an anchor, the person's got a level head. I mean, all of those. I'm complimenting you, by the way. She didn't react. I had to call it out. And so I was like, she's a bit slow.
Compliments are very
yeah, I know. But the thing is, like, if the other person isn't all those things, then I don't think I would have been able to reach that place.
You have negotiables and non-negotiables, right? I feel like with someone who meets the non-negotiables, you can make it work. And marriage...
But here's what's funny, to your earlier point, we haven't even jumped into the non-negotiables yet. This is to your question of what was that picture?
What was your picture of marriage?
It was all rooted in... Marriage was not there, that's my point. Marriage was never there. My life picture...
It was Hollywood, it was
a lot of things.
Career,
it was rooted in insecurity.
Yeah.
Whatever those things were, my problem was they were rooted in insecurity. However, when it came to marriage, I always knew, even if marriage was the last thing on the cards, because for me it was get married by 32, which I am today, by the way. It was, and I'm 6 years into a marriage. So you can tell how early I went against my own plan. But marriage was on the cards only for 32, and it was this thing that you would add on to embellish and make everything look beautiful. I never looked at it as a foundational piece of life. Because as we've talked about many times, for me now the priorities in life are so different. It's what kind of life, what kind of faith am I growing in? What kind of family am I nurturing? And what kind of legacy am I leaving? I never spoke like this at 20s, in my 20s.
We don't talk about things like legacy.
Yeah, but it took being married, having a child kind of changes it, but I would say marriage is still the key chunk. It took all of that.
Yeah. I mean, I would actually kind of differ. I would think that the first two, family and faith, yes, you think about in your 20s, and it's very important that you think about it when you get married.
For you specifically.
But I feel like the legacy aspect has kicked in after we became parents. After we had a child, that's when the legacy aspect, it's not like you're even thinking about it earlier. True, you have like a vague idea of what you want, but you don't really like articulate it and spend time thinking about it.
So I think the obvious question would then become to a listener's mind would then be, how the heck did I decide to get married? Right?
It's also my question. Because you're making it sound like, oh my gosh, I did not.
Well, you remember the time you took your top off? I thought
did not.
In that moment. That never happened, mom and dad. No parents. It never happened. That's just a joke. I say things I don't mean. Dear God, I hope you believe me. I'll tell you, I always say this. It is a freak chance, a freak moment that I
Because you're like, you're making it sound like, oh, I didn't want you in my life. Why?
No, baby, we're 6 years in. Don't take it personal. I'm just telling you what I thought. It is a freak chance that when we spoke, I still remember when we first met, I remember thinking, here's a girl who gets what I'm pursuing in life. Here's a girl who shares my faith. I was still serious about faith even back then. We connected on that. And we also, and you were also just as driven. You had your own aspirations. And for me, that was rare. That type of a connect with someone of the opposite sex was entirely rare. And in that moment, I realized here's someone you could consider. Maybe it doesn't have to wait till 32. And so, and that's a freak moment. And I say that's a freak moment because we connected on something deeper that day. And I don't know how I was able to recognize. I think that's God's grace, really, in that moment, that in my head it clicked. That concept clicked. Something I'd never thought of before clicked. And I said, oh, we should probably, of course, we were not attracted to each other in that first meeting. There's a whole story behind that. We don't have to get into it right now. But I think that connection really helped. But this is not to say, at the same time, this is not to say that I changed in a moment. When I say I changed from who I was to who I am, it was incremental. So that story I just shared is one example of me making a good decision. And I knew in that moment, if I choose to marry you, I'm marrying you not for selfish reasons. Somehow intuitively, I also realized some of my reasons were selfish. I would be marrying you because, okay, here was the other side of that. We started to talk a lot, and you were in a mindset where you wanted to get married. Whoever you were speaking to, it was just like, hey, if I'm going to intentionally engage with you on a daily basis, which we were, you were in a mindset where, I'm going to get married. I was like, I enjoyed the conversation because I never met someone who was, at a brain level, we were connecting. And when you put that, you stated up front, this was your intent. In that moment, I knew for the first time, based off a lot of past relationship mistakes I had made, I knew if I said yes, okay, I will honor that, and let's date with the intention of getting married, I knew I was doing the right thing. So that's what I mean when I say it was me changing bit by bit. And it started from the decision to get married. It was not even the marriage itself. It was just from the decision to get married. There's one little piece of maturity. And that was also inspired by you. I still say that. It's not necessarily that because you decide to get married, you become mature. It depends on the other person. It depends on...
some credit?
Yes, I always give you credit. Right?
Okay, I'm kidding. I didn't mean to
No. And I think... And I think the point here is that, and like I said earlier, I knew from when I looked at this, because for both of us, we look at marriage as a very sacred institution, and it's very intertwined with our belief as Christians. And so I knew in that moment, this was something that God would also be pleased with. Now, if you don't relate to me on this, by the way, I completely get it, but I'm just telling you my story and how we do it, right? So, and for me personally in that moment, I knew that this is something God would want. And it was even further cemented when my parents said, no, this is wrong. Marrying her is wrong. It's wrong for us. Not even it's wrong for you, it's wrong for us. And there were just so many funny stories there, which thankfully we're past all of that now. Our families are cool, but back then it was a lot of funny stories. Should I share one? I still remember the one. My favorite one was where my mom actually stood at. My mom. No, I'll tell you. I'll tell you. You don't worry.
I'm gonna find out with everyone.
You're okay. You're okay with the story. I promise you're okay with the story. I still remember this was in the middle of those big fights. We fought for 2.5 years to get married. I fought with my parents for 2.5 years to get married, and to get married to her. And so it was. I still remember my mom standing at the bottom of the stairs. I'm standing at the top of the stairs. My mom says something to the effect of, you know what? That girl is such a devious woman. She found the first good-looking, talented boy she could find, and she decided to snatch him up, that gold digger. And I was completely caught in the wrong element of the story. I said, I'm sorry, who's handsome? who's good-looking? Who's talented? Because I never heard that before. My mom's never said... my parents have never outrightly said things like that. We're Malayali parents. They don't say things like that. They say, love you, buddy. That's how they say love you. Sure. So, it's just a fist bump. So, it is just... that was just quack. But that's just an example. That's just an example.
Interesting period of
It was a very interesting period of our lives. And I think that kind of further kicked up this thing in me to say, yeah, I must be on the right path. I don't know why. I must be on the right path. And remember, I started out by saying money. my big desire was to have a lot of money. Here's another example of change.
Yeah.
I'll let you say what you want to say. I realize I'm kind of hijacking the conversation right now. Really, it's the reverse in real life. It's real life. In real life, it's reverse.
Yeah.
Right? This is the Relatabel Podcast. We're just trying to keep it relatable. But yeah, no.
We'll go with that.
No, but there was money is another place where I had a significant shift. I used to think money was it. You needed to have X in your bank account before you could even consider getting married. And no disrespect to couples who started that way. I have friends who started that way. For me, it was a lesson that money is not everything. When I said, okay, let's do this, and there was this fight going on, I still remember when we were about to get married, I had $25,000 in total because I'm not planning to get married, mind you. This is unexpected. And so, excuse me. And so I have $25,000 in total, and we managed, and I really thought we were going to sleep that first year on the floor of whichever house we took. She had some money saved, but I really thought we were just going to be sleeping on a floor. And with cutting a long story short, miraculously, when I tell you we furnished our house with, I think, almost 2 lakhs worth of furniture, queen size bed, mattress, dining table for 6,
a really nice mattress.
Really, which we still use, by the way, because that's how good it is. We've probably made 2 babies on that, but that's probably not something we should have said out loud. 3 babies? Yeah, it was actually 3. We lost a daughter last year. I will tell you about that as well. But what's so funny is all that stuff came within 25,000. That's right. Someone offered us 2 lakh worth of furniture for $25,000.
And that's the exact amount of money
I had in my bank account. And I still remember getting the shock of my life when this particular lady calls me, because I had seen her stuff. It was all secondhand. This was someone who was selling her furniture. I had seen it a week prior. She'd shown me all this stuff saying someone's blocked it. And she had sent out a PDF prior. So I knew the prices as per the PDF. And everything put together was about 2 lakhs. And then she called me a week later saying, Abel, the lady who was supposed to pick up all this stuff backed out. I know you guys are looking for this stuff. I have to travel tomorrow. Tell you what, I'm willing for you to take it all off my hands. You just need to pay me 25,000 for it. I don't know why she said 25,000. That was all I had. But in that moment, I welled up and I knew God was watching out for me in that moment. And he was teaching me a very critical lesson. You don't need money for this. Marriage is something else. Learn to view it the way I view it. I felt like God was telling me those things in those moments and teaching me a valuable lesson about money. So that's an example of the humble beginnings and just the small changes that began at that time. But if we had to kind of, I think, just go down the list of all the experiences you and I have gone through,
we'll be here all night.
We've only got a couple of minutes for this, so we're not going to jump into it. So how would you, what would you think are the biggest changes, the way you see it then? I've just given examples. What would you think are the biggest changes? And we could probably jump into that if you wish.
I think there are very, very, very significant tectonic level changes in the way you think.
Is she calling me fat when she says tectonic?
No, I mean like you're
like a damn earthquake.
Foundations have changed.
Yeah, that's true. It is tectonic.
Yeah. Because the things that used to drive you before as a person are not the things that drive you now. And they were misplaced. Like a lot of it, it was very misplaced. Even your sense of importance or direction or a sense of being was hinged on the wrong things. Not that those things are bad. Those things are all good things.
Yeah.
But you can't hinge, you shouldn't hinge. And for example, a career and money, as important as it is, it doesn't define who you are.
Right.
And I feel like, so when you look at that, you look at just your sense of being and identity, your understanding of money and its place in your life and its role in your life, your understanding of family, and your faith, the way you engage with God and the way your faith engages in your life on a daily basis. those are all like pretty foundational, and I would say that each of these areas has seen a massive shift.
Yeah, but if we had to go into the why did marriage do that?
I don't know if marriage did it. I think, again, without like wanting to, I think God brought about those changes,
right.
And He used me as a part of the,
right.
I don't know, the
as like I said, marriage was the catalyst, and used you in that.
It was a catalyst, but I don't know if
it was
marriage caused or taught you all those lessons, or like
I think so. Let me put it like this then. Let me try to put it in different ways. I think what comes with marriage, if you look at it the way we do, I think what comes with marriage is a clear sense of responsibility. I am responsible for someone else now. And this goes both ways. You're responsible for me. I feel responsible for you. So there's that oneness. We look at marriage like that. And because we have that as our base understanding of marriage, I think as even when in moments of struggle, like for me, the struggle was real. One of the vices, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you before. For me, one of my vices was always...
I was like, are you confessing to something on a podcast? Sure.
What she didn't say is, don't you damn dare say this on the podcast before you tell me. No, I think one of the vices I thought I'd be getting rid of when I get married is my weakness as far as women are concerned. Right? I mean...
Yeah, that too. I knew about this. It's not news to me. But I mean, that's one of the other things.
I'm talking about it like the major revelation of the year. It's like, ta-da!
Yeah.
That's it. Really?
No, I mean to say that it's not like a lot of people view marriage as like, oh, I'm going to get... It's going to fix
things.
About me. No.
That's actually a good point.
It's not going to fix. Because your weakness with women is something that you need to deal with. I'm not going to come and like somehow...
Okay, that's a good point. I think that's a good caveat to put in this conversation. It's not that marriage fixes things. Yeah. If you view marriage the way we do, then there is... I think you have this awakening of sorts where you're like, okay, I've got to work on this thing to make it right for the marriage. And that, in a way, is marriage kind of playing on you as well. Yeah.
Right? Because if you're broken in this area, like if you look at it in the concept of oneness that we subscribe to, if you are broken in this one area, you're not just hurting me, you're hurting yourself.
Right.
And you're not just hurting yourself, you're hurting me in the process. Because
so let's unpack that a little bit. Let's talk about that piece. Because I thought getting married would solve it. I really did. And mind you, we have fought to get married, like I shared. And yet what's so funny is after all of that, it still continued to be a problem. Now, again, not saying I went and slept with anybody, right? But I'm just talking about if I'm honestly evaluating the way I think, the way I behaved sometimes, I knew, you're pushing a line here that you typically shouldn't.
So one of those tectonic shifts that I said, this would be one of them. If we're honest, that it would be one.
Something about the way she says tectonic shift now makes me think of twerking. It's like the Earth's surface just twerking. Ah! Did you just pinch me under the table? No. Okay. But
twerking, the Earth twerking. What?
I mean, think of the plates. Just Oh no. Okay, fine. Okay, never mind. I'm just saying. So I thought that would that's probably the change that was going to happen. Yeah. But it didn't. And again, I think with every failure in secret, there was this building up of, how do I put this? Was it just the pressure, which can eat you alive? The pressure can eat you alive, but in my case, it didn't eat me alive. I think
What pressure?
It really...
like pressure to...
Pressure, not pleasure.
Pressure. What?
Pressure.
What pressure? Pressure like...
I think just the pressure like, oh, you're living a double life. It almost felt like at some points you were living this double life. And I'm like, that's not fair to her. Right? I mean, that's just not fair to her. And I think that was, that can come on you very strongly as guilt. But in my case, I thankfully, it didn't become so heavy. It didn't become just guilt. It was things like, let's work on this. Let's work around this to get it right. I was praying about it. I mean, my best friends knew about it, right? I was very accountable to a few sets of people, and she knows each one of them. And one of those interesting gauges of how far our marriage has come is the fact that I've always said this: the day I start talking to you the way I talk to my best friends, you'll know that you're really in my
inner circle. I mean, when I'm giving my marriage vows and put a wedding ring on your finger.
I'm sorry. I mean, I think this is where we're different. We're different as people, right? It takes me a lot of time to kind of open up, even if it was to you.
That's a good point.
I had intentions.
Yeah,
I had intentions to open up to you.
It's a good point you make there, because to a certain extent there was this idea that just getting married would fix certain areas of you that was broken, and it doesn't. You have to be very intentional about changing and working in those areas. And it takes work.
And also the other thing,
we didn't uncover it until a few years into
5 years into our marriage.
Past our
fifth anniversary. Definitely past our fifth anniversary. Yeah, I think it's past our fifth.
Where some of these things actually came to the forefront, and we were like, okay, we've got to work on this.
Yeah.
It's not just going to happen.
Yeah, and it took a journey. And I'll tell you what else made, like I said, right? It's also the experiences that we went through together. Losing our daughter, I brought that up. I think losing Amy last year, burying her, going through that whole process with you shifted something for me. For sure it shifted. Because prior to that, I had a surgery where the doctor was surprised I was even alive. They said, you should have technically been dead when you were brought into the hospital. I had two surgeries like that, two major surgeries like that in 1 year. One was life-threatening. The other one was, I ended up being 14 days, could have been life-threatening. We had that. We lost my mom right after I got married. Right after we got married. I mean, the whole thing, I think every experience made me appreciate who I was journeying with. And I suddenly realized this person's not here to take me away from what I want to do or who I am as a person. In fact, if anything at all, this person is here to make it so much more richer, make the journey so much more richer. And for me, that is, you're welcome. For me, I'm not even looking at a script here. You know that, right?
I'm thinking about that whole phase, like very early on in our marriage, where you you were very depressed.
Yeah, depression was another episode. Yeah. I mean, I didn't even go to the depression part of it. That was a whole other episode where for 4 years I went through depression as well, because I wasn't doing well on my career, and I was not content.
It didn't look the way you wanted it.
Correct. Be careful, please. So it didn't look the way I wanted it. I think with every one of these moments, the fact that you were there suddenly made me realize that marriage was never what I thought it was. Like I said in the beginning when I started, marriage was this thing I would put on top. It was the cherry on the cake. Now, 6 years later, I realized without marriage as part of my foundation, what I'm doing today, the mindset I have, I'm so much happier today. I've not gone to see my sports psychologist who knows I'm doing these podcasts, even because we're still in touch as friends. I haven't gone to see him in a long time. We still have healthy chats now. It's not chats of, oh, dude, I'm done. It's not that anymore. When I work, I'm for the first time working on my comedy, my craft, everything I'm doing. I'm working at it completely from a place of, I do this because I want to do it. I'm not doing this because I'm trying to keep up with my contemporaries who are on Netflix and on Amazon Prime, and one just won an award, in fact, just a few hours ago. I'm not trying to keep up with anybody. I'm just trying to do me. And it's all coming from this really healthy place. A healthy place that was, again, completely coming from this cocktail that we've just described of experience, of you being there in that relationship, the kind of person you are, and also just the faith perspective of things. I think it's so many different pieces that marriage really brought out. And, really just influenced me.
I would say, definitely was a catalyst.
Yeah, I mean, so now that everything is rooted in such a strong way, it now feels like, yeah, I'm ready to move forward. I'm ready to go ahead. So I think the bottom line message here, if there is a bottom line message at all, is if you're thinking of getting married and you're in your 20s and 30s and you have the opportunity to partner with someone who you know this is not love alone, this is a lot more that's at play here. This is a common life path. This is a common set of goals. Because that's where we began. I would strongly encourage you to consider that road. Because that road did wonders for me personally. I spoke about marriage from a very personal change standpoint today, and that's all I really wanted to highlight.
Yeah. And I honestly think we started off, again, this is not a pitch for marriage. It's not like, oh,
for sure,
single, you have to get married and that's the only way you're going to learn and grow in life. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Life teaches you, God really teaches you, even if you're single. If you allow Him to teach you and work in your life. But I do think that we, for whatever, all the reasons that you just mentioned, the common goals, for us, because we engage with our faith so actively, it was very important that we partner with someone who also actively engages with their faith.
So what she's saying is, if I can put that in other words, if I can just put that in other words, a common belief, a common set of principles. For us, faith, we have been calling it faith the entire time, but it completely informs everything that we believe, everything that we live by. So belief and principles is the other way I would put it.
And the way God interacts with us.
Belief and principles.
Yeah. But I feel like 6 years in, we're at a place where we appreciate each other so much more today than we did on our wedding day. And we just celebrated 6 years of our
Just so you know, she said appreciate, I say love.
Yeah.
Because we love each other.
Yes, we do.
Now go fix me a sandwich. I'm kidding. So, like she said, it's not a case for marriage. It's just encouraging you.
I mean, and this is about you sharing your journey. Right?
Just my journey, So this is my truth. This is what has worked for me. Yeah. So if it's something that you really, if this episode has made you think, or if there's questions that you have, I would love to engage in a healthy discussion. Even if you disagreed with me, I would love to hear about it. So DM me. My handle is Abel Matthews Entertainment on Instagram, Facebook. Same goes for YouTube as well. That's my YouTube channel. You could hit me up in the comments. As always, I first released the audio of this and then I released the video of it a few days later. So either which way, you can definitely reach out to me on any one of these social media handles. I'm available on all of them, or even on email, which is abel@abelmatthewsentertainment.com. So with that being said, Kavitha, put it there, buddy. Thanks for having us. Thanks for coming on to the show. Appreciate you. Also, if you'd like for us to talk a little bit more about our marriage story, if that's something that you want to see, I would love to bring Kavi back. If you want to know more about her, I would love to just interview you. That'll be fun. No, never mind. Okay, fine. With that being said, this is another episode of the Relatabel Podcast in the books. Do subscribe, do share. This podcast is available on anywhere you get podcasts. So that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Peace out. Bye from Kav.
Bye-bye.
And me.
Bye, you guys. It was fun chatting.
Absolutely.